Hello and a very warm welcome to a brand new edition of World Panorama with me, Frank Pereira, on Rajya Sabha television. Over the next half an hour, we're going to bring you a roundup of all the significant events to have taken place across the world this week. Let's begin, as always, with the latest headlines. Maithripala Sirisena takes oath as the new president of Sri Lanka, ends almost decade-long rule of Mahinda Rajapakse in a tightly contested presidential election. Deadly raids and terror spree in Paris. Police killed 2 suspects in Charlie Hebdo massacre. Allies shot dead after 4 killed at Kosher Grocery. Al-Qaeda in Yemen claims responsibility for the attack. Boko Haram militants unleash a fresh wave of terror in Nigeria. Thousands killed in indiscriminate firing in the town of Baga. Residents flee, leaving the dead unburied. And India announces squad for the upcoming ICC Cricket World Cup to be played in Australia and New Zealand. All-rounders Stuart Binney and Akshar Patel included in the team. No major surprises among the 15 players in terms of either inclusions or exclusions. Our top focus on the show this week. Maithripala Sirisena is the new president of Sri Lanka. Sirisena's outright victory in the elections is a surprise for many, but ended the decade-long tenure of Mahinda Rajapakse, who's credited with ridding the country of the LTT, but is also blamed for anti-Tamil war crimes. Here's more.
Till just a few weeks back, Maithripala Sirisena was a minister in outgoing President Mahinda Rajapaksa's government, till he broke away in November and decided to contest against Rajapaksa for Sri Lanka's top job. Sirisena is set to lead a potentially fractious coalition of ethnic, religious, Marxist and centre-right parties.
සතුට සියලු දෙනාටම රටේ සමස්ත පුරවැසියන්ට සතුටින් බෙදා හදා ගැනීමට අපි ඉඩ දිය යුතුයි. ඒ නිසා කිසියම් ආකාරයකින් හිංසා පීඩා කිරීමෙන් වැළකීලා ඊ타මත්ම අවිහිංසාවාදීව කරුණා සහගතව
People of Sri Lanka gave a message that they want to change and we want to fulfill their desires.
Celebrations had begun even as initial trends came in. What wasn't expected is that there were no signs of protests or any major mobilization of security forces. A completely smooth transition of power with Rajapaksa conceding defeat. Sri Lanka's Elections Commission came in for praise. Prime Minister Narendra Modi congratulated Sirisena on his victory, writing on Twitter, "I spoke to Sri Maithripala Sirisena and congratulated him. I congratulate the people of Sri Lanka on the peaceful and democratic poll process."
जिस नई पॉलिटिकल पार्टी को जीत हासिल हुई है उसको मैं हार्दिक बधाई देता हूं.
Both Rajapaksa and Sirisena are Sinhalese, but in a sharp contrast, Sirisena has the support of the biggest Tamil political grouping, underscoring anger over continued presence of the army in the north and lack of political autonomy. Political parties in Tamil Nadu voice hopes of a sea change on treatment of Tamils under the new regime.
It is a happy moment for all the Tamils living the world over. But whether the new incumbent will protect the Tamils or do something in favor of the Tamils has to be seen.
Sri Lanka watchers echo the importance of this power shift in Sri Lanka for India from the bilateral as well as geostrategic viewpoint.
I consider this victory of the opposition in Sri Lanka is a major victory for Tamilians, and it proved against the genocide of more than 60-70,000 Tamilians by Rajapakse is now proved.
Sirisena has pledged to abolish the executive presidency that gave Rajapakse unprecedented power, crack down on corruption and hold fresh parliamentary elections within 100 days. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
Well, joining me for a chat this week on the program is Mr. P. Sahadevan, Professor, South Asian Studies, JNU. Welcome, Professor, and thank you for joining me on the program. Let's talk about the elections in Sri Lanka. Now, of course, a few weeks ago, no one really expected Mahinda Rajapakse to lose. Everyone had written it off as a foregone conclusion that Rajapakse would win. But everything changed in the last week of the elections. What seemed to have happened in Sri Lanka?
I think when he announced the election in November, I think he was quite confident. But I think towards the end of December, he was losing the hope. What went wrong for him? I think it's last 5 years of misrule in a way. He, in a way, actually scuttled all the democratic processes, undermined democratic institutions. There's a widespread nepotism, including, giving a number of places for positions for his family members. I think growing corruption in the country and also the whole price raise and inflation. I think misuse of the executive presidency is also one of the major reasons, which in a way actually instructed Sri Sena to really abolish the executive presidency in 100 days,
yes,
which is a tall order, but I don't know how he's going to cope up with the pressure. That's sort of the promise. So I think it's, if you need to take a very cumulative sort of assessment of what really sort of he did for the last 5 years, I think it's growing alienation of the minorities, which includes the Muslims, also one of the major contributing factor there.
Yes, Muslims have been targeted, especially by the majority Buddhists there in Sri Lanka, and that has been a problem, isn't it?
True, that's true. I think it's, I mean, after the war ended in 2009, I think nationalism, in a way, actually got so much of fillip from the regime itself. So in the process, what happened, the Buddhist radical groups, in a way, took up on the minorities, in a way targeting at their, the religious institutions, there's a business establishment and so on and so forth. So the Muslims have really sort of quite very unhappy, not only unhappy, but they are very annoyed with the way the regime also handled the whole issue.
Were you surprised by the results though?
I think, that's what I said. I think it's not a huge surprise, but, because by December it was known very clear that I think you will lose the election. In a way, if you look at the whole poll statistics, the winning margin is not very huge.
Yes, yes.
Roughly about 440,000 votes out of roughly about 12.5 million votes polled. So it's about 3.7% vote difference in a way. And you must also factor in this, the number of political formations that supported Sri Sena, a very formidable United National Party, the main opposition party, the Sri Lankan Muslim Congress, the major political group from the Muslim community, the Tamil National Alliance. They have a very strong hold in the northern eastern provinces where the Sri Lankan Tamils are majority, Janata Vimukti Peramuna, and a whole lot of, the Sinhalese nationalist group. If you have seen all of them together against one man, this man was able to really sort of, reduce the winning margin. In a way, he gave a very tough fight. It's not he didn't go down as a, as someone without making the impact. I think he really gave a good fight and single-handedly, in a way, actually got, a huge vote chunk. In a way, it also really indicates, I think the Sinhalese Buddhist vote is deeply divided between the two, and the strongholds he still enjoys in the Sinhalese South, in a way.
Indeed. But in hindsight, would Rajapaksa be kicking himself for calling early elections, or do you think that his popularity would have only deteriorated if he waited for his entire term to end?
It would have deteriorated in a way. I think that's what the intelligent calculation also. I think that they told him that if you go for the election now, you will win by a slender majority. But if you really wait for another 2 years, you'll really lose the election. And also astrology didn't really help him much in a way. So therefore, I think he took a chance. I think that he was quite confident in November, but no one expected out of blue that Sri Sena emerged as a consensus candidate for the opposition. He was actually part of the government in a way. I think a very obedient well-wisher, or what do you call? He shared a lot of moments with Rajapaksa. I think Rajapaksa never realized that this man would actually really sort of come out and, or what you call it as backstab him and really, win this election in a way. Therefore, which is in a way, I think that's a surprise for Rajapaksa. Had anyone else contested against Rajapaksa, Rajapaksa perhaps would actually really won the election. If Ranil contested the election, he did twice in the past. If he had contested once more, quite inevitable. I think they would lose the election because the UNB itself is a divided house.
Indeed.
And he doesn't have much credit to really show to the people that he has done great things in Sri Lanka. Whereas Rajapaksa, he brought the Chinese aid and assistance and, built infrastructure to such a level. I think that he had really showcased the post-civil war Sri Lanka in a way to really sort of tell the world that he has done a lot in the post-civil war period.
Talking about China, we know the kind of relations that Rajapaksa enjoyed with China. Now, let's bring in India into the picture as well. What does this result really mean for India?
I think there is going to be a very reasonable engagement. I think what happened during Rajapaksa time was, Rajapaksa is a very slippery figure in a way. I think he talks something here and goes back and, does something different. You didn't have a kind of a very reasonable political trust between the leadership in India and there. And precisely because I think he was virtually non-committal or in a way actually sort of backtracking all the time. Now you have somebody who can really deal with him, talk to him at a level that you can really evoke certain trust from New Delhi, and that's one. B, I think he's not going to be a rabid pro-China person going to be. I think he's going to be very reasonable. And this is what he said. He's not going to be really sort of annoy India. He's not going to be also depending upon India. He's going to be a kind of non-aligned policy of, equidistance and engaging with everyone, including the West, which he has remained alienated. And so on. Therefore, I think for us, I think a number of things can be really talked with Sirisena with a confidence and with a kind of a trust that one requires in diplomacy.
Right.
And that was something which was missing in Rajapaksa's time.
Indeed. Yeah. All right, we'll have to leave it at that, Professor. Thank you so much for joining us on the program and putting things into perspective
Thank you so much.
On that note, of course, let's move on to another big story that we've been tracking the entire week this week. France's capital was transformed into a war zone as a 3-day manhunt for militants who attacked the magazine Charlie Hebdo ended on Friday. Security forces in simultaneous raids killed 3 men suspected in the slaying of 17 people, including 4 hostages at a kosher grocery. The carnage played out in a multi-front battle that frayed the nerves of a nation already on edge over the state of its security and social cohesion. By the time the smoke cleared, police had killed 34-year-old Syed Kouachi and his 32-year-old brother Sharif, the 2 gunmen suspected of Wednesday's attack on the French magazine. Authorities had cornered the French-born brothers at a printing facility near the capital's main airport. On the city's eastern edge, meanwhile, police stormed a kosher grocery where an alleged confederate of the 2 brothers held several people hostage at gunpoint. The man, 32-year-old Ahmedi Kolibali, was killed. Officials said they believed he killed 4 hostages before police raided the store. On Thursday, Ahmedi allegedly shot and killed a female police officer in a southern suburb of Paris. Authorities continued searching for a woman in connection with the officer's killing. Moving on now, an Israeli court sentenced a member of the Hamas group to life imprisonment over the killing of 3 Israeli teenagers. The killings led to the devastating Gaza war last year. Here's a detailed report.
Hussam Kawasmeh, a member of the Hamas group, has been sentenced to life in prison by an Israeli court. Kawasmeh has been sentenced for the killing of 3 Israeli youth. The abduction of these 3 teenagers had set off a chain of events that led to the 50-day Gaza war. The court sentenced him to 3 consecutive life terms. He has also been ordered to pay 250,000 shekels or $78,000 in compensation to the families of each of the 3 victims. The 3 Israeli teenagers were abducted on 12th of June last year as they were hitchhiking near a settlement in the West Bank. Their bodies were found in the West Bank nearly 3 weeks after their disappearance. In an apparent revenge attack in July, a Palestinian teenager, Khudair, was abducted and burned to death in Jerusalem. Khudair's death and the resulting manhunt and arrest by Israel led to clashes between Palestinians and Israeli police and triggered rocket fire from the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip. The 7-week-long war that followed resulted in the death of over 2,000 Palestinians and 73 Israelis, mostly soldiers. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, it's time for a short break now, but still to come, hundreds of bodies, too many to count, remain strewn in the Nigerian town of Baga from an Islamist extremist attack. Amnesty International called it one of the deadliest terrorist massacres in history. Stay tuned for the details after the short break. Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha Television. Well, days after Boko Haram captured a key town and military base in the northeast Nigerian town of Baga, the militants are razing several towns and villages. On Thursday, the town was hit by fresh assault as militants indiscriminately killed hundreds. Residents fled their homes and said they were unable to bury the dead as corpses lay on the streets. Most of those who fled were trapped on islands on Lake Chad. Here's more.
Islamist group Boko Haram attacked the Nigerian town of Baga for the second time in a week, leaving hundreds of bodies littering the streets. The insurgents shot residents indiscriminately and burned buildings on Tuesday night, and killings have continued hence. The group had on the weekend captured the town and the headquarters of the multinational joint task force. Boko Haram is now in control of Baga and 16 neighboring towns after the military retreated.
My heart aches at the thought of the suffering of the girls and boys kidnapped by the brutal extremist groups Boko Haram and Daesh. I would like to make a special appeal to the conscience of all those involved in senseless violence. It is in your power to end these acts and to save lives.
The attack comes even as Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan launched his re-election campaign. He has been criticized for his inability to end the insurgency. His opponent at next month's elections, former military ruler Muhammadu Buhari, has blamed government corruption for the lack of firepower. But the head of state blames his predecessors for not investing enough in defense.
Nigeria must move forward. Nigeria is for the youth. Nigeria is not for old people like us. The youth must redefine this country. The young generation must redefine this country. We must take this country to where we want to go. Nobody can push us backward. The past is past.
Boko Haram has also launched cross-border attacks into Chad and Cameroon, and in a recent video had threatened to step up violence. The group launched a military campaign in 2009 to create an Islamic state. The conflict has displaced at least 1.5 million people, while more than 2,000 were killed last year. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, 2611 terror mastermind Zakir Rahman Lakhvi is to stay in jail. The Pakistan Supreme Court overturned the High Court order stating Lakhvi be freed. The apex court directed that the case be heard again and decided on merit. Indian security analysts have said that keeping Lakhvi in jail can't be seen as seriousness against anti-India terror.
It's back to jail again, days after the 2611 kingpin saw hopes of getting back on the terror trail. As per orders, the High Court will now hear the case afresh starting Monday next week. The court has been asked to decide the case on merit without rushing things through. To think the man almost walked free. An anti-terrorism court had granted Lakhvi bail on the 18th of December. The very next day, however, he was detained under the Maintenance of Public Order Act. Then on the 29th, the Islamabad High Court suspended that detention. Now the Supreme Court steps in. After sharp protest and concern over plans to let him out, security analysts in India voiced relief.
Pakistan Army has to show an image where they have to show that they are bereaving for their children, who have 140 odd children have been killed, and they cannot let the terrorists like this just go on bail and roam freely. India also will now get a little bit of, shouldn't say a little bit, but quite a lot of confidence into this, their own effort. They're raising their voice, the public speaking, the media talking about it, and the pressure they're creating on Pakistan. So it all has summed up totally into this action.
Though many warn that just this step cannot be read as Pakistan's seriousness on action in the 2611 case.
This is a decision that is to be cautiously welcomed. After Peshawar, there has been what you might call as a change as far as the perception or the attitude towards terrorism per se in Pakistan.
Lakhvi and 6 others have been charged with planning and executing the 2611 attacks. They were indicted in 2009, a year after the attack, and the case has moved slowly since. Political leaders in India stress on the need for definite forward movement.
आतंकवादियों को तो जेल में ही होना चाहिए, इसमें कोई बड़ी बात है नहीं,
जहां तक पाकिस्तान पर प्रश्न उठते हैं, जब हाफिज सईद जैसे लोग घूमते हैं खुलेआम सरेआम, जबकि उनके ऊपर में इतना बड़ा एक रेजोल्यूशन है, $10 बिलियन का एक अवार्ड है, तब भी तो इसीलिए वो प्रश्न उठ जाते हैं दोहरी नीति के। लेकिन अगर वो इन दोनों के ऊपर में अच्छे से कार्रवाई करें तो 26/11 के लोगों को कुछ इंसाफ मिल जाएगा।
In keeping Lakhvi behind bars, Pakistan is seen as keen to show up an anti-terror stand in the backdrop of the Peshawar school attack, especially in the light of high-level US visits to India. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
Moving on now, here's a quick wrap of the other international news of the week in our Globe Watch.
Pakistan's parliament has approved the creation of special trial courts supervised by army officers for the swift trials of terrorism suspects. Both the upper and lower house of the Pak parliament approved the proposed changes to the constitution in unanimous votes. The change is designed to speed up the trials of alleged terrorists, and these military courts will act as an emergency measure. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has confirmed that the Palestinians will officially become a member of the International Criminal Court on 1st of April. Palestine had delivered documents on joining the Rome Statute of the ICC and other international treaties to UN headquarters on 2nd of January. The move has heightened tensions with Israel and could lead to cuts in US aid. Cuba released 3 detainees on Wednesday in a sign it was fulfilling an agreement to free a list of 53 people the United States regards as political prisoners as part of a thaw in relations between the two nations. The government freed 19-year-old twin brothers Diego Vargas Martin and Bianco Vargas Martin on Wednesday afternoon. The pair were arrested in December 2012 and sentenced to 30 months in jail for disorderly conduct and threatening a state official. A third man, Enrique Miranda, was also freed.
Let's shift focus now and bring you up to speed with all the sports news that you might have missed out on this week. Here's all the sports action. All-rounders Stuart Binney and Akshar Patel have been included in India's squad for the 2015 World Cup. There were no major surprises among the 15 players in terms of either inclusions or exclusions after the selectors met in Mumbai on Tuesday afternoon to pick the team. The squad has 5 batsmen, 2 wicketkeeper batsmen, 3 all-rounders, 2 left-arm spinners, 1 medium pacer, 4 seamers and 1 specialist spinner. Ahead of the ICC Cricket World Cup 2015, Pakistan, Sri Lanka and South Africa have announced their World Cup squads. Pakistan included veteran batsman and former skipper Yunus Khan, while Mohammad Hafiz, whose bowling action is under the scanner, has also been given a spot in the team to be led by Misbah ul Haq. Sri Lanka named Angelo Matthews as the captain for the tournament. The team has included veteran players like Mahela Jayawardene, Dilshan and Sangakkara. At Cape Town, injured wicketkeeper batsman Quinton de Kock was named in South Africa's squad to be led by ABD. Senior members of Barcelona's squad met with Lionel Messi on Wednesday to discuss the Argentines' dissatisfaction with coach Luis Enrique, hoping to prevent their bust-up undermining the club's bid for trophies. Luis Enrique has found himself in the spotlight as the Catalan club struggles to keep pace with Real Madrid, and his future could hinge on whether he can patch up his differences with the talismanic Messi. Fernando Torres tasted victory against Real Madrid as an Atletico Madrid player for the first time as the La Liga champions downed their city rivals 2-0 in the first leg of their Copa del Rey last 16 tie on Wednesday. Despite a disappointing performance from Torres, the hosts beat Real Madrid for the 3rd time in 4 attempts this season. Last season's cup winners will now have it all to do when the two sides meet again for the return leg at the Santiago Bernabeu on January 15th. Well, let's now take a look at what's creating a buzz in the world of show business. Here's our entertainment wrap.
Actors lie for a living, but this is living a lie.
Seth Rogen's The Interview has worked surprisingly well, especially on digital channels with over $30 million of earnings even after his haphazard release. The James Franco starrer was rented or purchased 4.3 million times online, which came up to $31 million of earning. However, the movie has grossed only $5 million in theatres after its run was drastically scaled back in the face of terror threats. Anne Hathaway has revealed that her only advice for Neil Patrick Harris to make his Oscars hosting gig successful is to do opposite of what she did when she hosted the event. The Devil Wears Prada star said that she believes the comedian will be great as he's a natural host. Hathaway and co-host James Franco received criticism for their 2011 Oscar performance, especially their opening, where they spoofed the year's top movies. Channing Tatum has finally got the release date of his upcoming X-Men spin-off movie Gambit in 2016. The actor excitedly announced on Twitter that his highly anticipated movie will hit theatres on 7th of October 2016. Lauren Schuler-Donner had previously confirmed that Tatum will be playing the lead character Gambit, who is known for being an expert gambler with special powers over kinetic energy. The Gambit comic book character was first portrayed on the big screen by Taylor Kitsch in 2009's X-Men Origins. Angelina Jolie will reportedly meet Pope Francis when she visits Vatican City as a UN ambassador. However, it is unclear as to what topics will be discussed between the 39-year-old actress and the Pope. The UN said that they were not in a position to provide any information at this point, but a formal announcement would be made at a later stage. Jolie's husband, Brad Pitt, is also rumored to be joining the actress. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Finally, Colombia celebrated diversity and unity during the annual Blacks and Whites Carnival. In the most anticipated finale, participants dressed in black and white to symbolize unity and equality while celebrating ethnic and cultural diversity. I'm going to leave you with visuals of the parade in Pasto, Colombia. Enjoy, and I'll see you again next week.